Ed?
I'm just going along with the systems type of thinking approach. We have a cross-functional team and work with that as a guideline for the process rather than going off compartmentalized.
So elaborate on that, because I'm not sure exactly what you're recommending.
Well, I would want everyone to be aware of what, or when they make a decision, how it affects the rest of the system. You push a balloon in here, it pops out at the other end, and I would strive to get that system's viewpoint. And I know that everybody can't know every area fully, and so I would try to get good teamwork, with the people from all different areas.
Would I be correct in interpreting you to be saying the fundamental problem or leverage point would be the point of cooperation and teamwork? We're not presently working well together. We need teams that work together. I would look at the school system as a system of different teams, assemble teams, try to maybe work with the notion of how can we function better as a coordinated set of teams. Okay, let's stop at this point now and discuss our discussion as far as we went. And let's look at it in terms of, imagine this was a class, and in some sense, of course, it's an atypical class because I have wonderful students here with a lot of background on the subject, with a fair degree of self-confidence and so forth. But, and we cannot hope to have that in every classroom, but nevertheless, let's look at the discussion from the point of view of the dimensions of questioning. Could you see how we were exploring various domains of thought? How did the domains come in? I mean, in a way, this is sort of stating the obvious, but let's state the obvious.
Well, you went through the domains one by one and asked us to respond to questions that related to a specific domain.
Right, so teachers can, if they understand the domains that intersect with the question, can explicitly call upon students to respond to these various domains. Thereby, notice also the interdisciplinary implications that follow from that. They're not just going to be thinking within one category. They're going to start to use what they're learning in different subjects and begin to bring it together if teachers ask for these various domains. Did you see where System 1 questions, that is, questions of knowledge, were coming into play in our discussion? Yes?
When I said my comment, I said, based upon your previous content that you gave us, the principle in there was that you start with what things you have control over. So I felt that using that rationale brought me into a System 1.
Did you notice also that a lot of the early comments were matters of fact? You were pointing out facts that no one would deny, that there are some problem of guns in school, there's a greater degree of violence, that there has been some breaking down in a family structure, that there is more expensive equipment. This is in the factual domain. These are matters of knowledge. And you were setting out these various facts. So we were assembling quite an array of facts in the beginning. And then we were moving much more into questions of judgment. Did you see any questions of preference that arose?
Well, at one point you asked someone if they were expressing a preference or a judgment.
Right, with Thomas.
Which was very helpful in clarifying.
Right, but you also noticed that we didn't get into any questions of preference. And very typically in a well-done discussion, preference plays a little role. That is, what we're looking for is knowledge and judgment. We're not just asking you, what do you like? Yes?
One thing that struck me is that by delineating the different domains, it kept, although this may not have happened in this group anyway, but it kept people from being able to make statements like, but the real problem is somewhere else. In other words, it tended, at least for preliminary, while all of this was laid out, it sort of equalized everything. And also that prevented a certain pessimism from entering in.
Sure, it prevented superficial thinking, it forced a discipline on the discussion, and it led to recognition of complexity. So all of those things are byproducts of this more disciplined mode of questioning. And it is not my experience that students cannot do this. It's my experience that they simply have not been asked to do this. And the reason is that their teachers haven't been taught to question in these ways, are confused about these categories, these different kinds of questions. But not that they can't, that is, students can't handle these. And in fact, it makes it a little bit easier to think if somebody is bringing these distinctions in to the discussion in a very explicit way. I mean, imagine you simply had a free-for-all in the classroom over what's wrong with the schools. With no discipline, you would have a lot of quick and easy answers. People would throw them out. They would then defend them. Their ego would get attached to them. You'd have assertion, counter-assertion, and so forth. There's a very interesting Monty Python skit that sheds light on this. This individual walks in, and he wants to buy 5 minutes of arguments. And so he sees this door, and he goes in, and he says, "Is this the room for argument?" And the person says, "You twerp, you idiot, you incompetent nincompoop." And the person says, "Is this argument?" And he says, "No, this is abuse. If you want argument, go there." So now he goes over to this other room, and he looks into the room, and he sees up on the wall, argument. And he says, "This is the room for argument, is it not?" And the person says, "No, it isn't." And he says, "Well, yes, it is. It says it right there." And he says, "No, it doesn't." And he says, "Now, wait a minute here. You're not telling me that argument is just disagreement, are you?" "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "Well, I guess," and then the person says, "Your time is up." And he says, "No, it isn't." And then the first person just shuts up, you know, because this guy's trying to get more time. Okay, now, the interesting point, logical point, is that many people, when they get in a discussion, end up simply engaging in abuse or contradiction. Yes, it is, no, it isn't, is, isn't, isn't, as the little kids do. Is. But neither of those is really critical thinking discussion. Critical thinking discussion is not abuse. We don't abuse each other. We don't call names. We don't throw epithets around. And secondly, we don't simply contradict each other, because this would go nowhere. We have to bring fact into it, knowledge, and we have to make judgments. And we're relevant. We express preferences, but we know when we're doing that. So it is possible to bring, the upshot of these 3 demonstrations is that it's possible to bring disciplined questioning into the classroom. And any teacher who wants to can learn how to question in this way. And students who are questioned in this way learn a little bit about intellectual discipline. Then if we follow up with structures that build upon it, put them into groups of 3, put them into groups of 2, have specific assignments, or we give them a responsibility to play some of these roles in the questioning process, they can do it. But the problem is, it isn't done. I mean, I went to literally 8 colleges, got 4 degrees, and I never had an instructor that I think really questioned fully in this disciplined way. There were many instructors who questioned with elements of this, but I didn't see anyone who had it together. And in fact, most of my professors didn't question in this systematic way. They had questions on the test and on the quiz and at the back of the book, and they answered questions if questions were raised in class, but they didn't question in the sense that we're talking about here Socratically. So here is this powerful teaching tool that has existed since the time of Socrates that still really isn't in everyday education in a significant fashion. Now, it is not the solution to everything. Every class, if you want to foster thinking, does not become a Socratic discussion unless you're designing a very specific kind of class with very particular objectives. But it has a role to play in almost any class. And there are circumstances where you can bring it in and then go on to other structures and come back to it. But it deals with a fundamental feature of critical thinking, questions. It recognized that it is questions that drive thinking, and that the quality of our thinking is a direct product of the quality of the questions we ask. And until we become questioners, and the questions become our questions, and we have a passionate desire to answer those questions and pursue them, we have not yet become an educated person. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for participating.